Then huda alon men ge gauma behe gotun tafaatu dirasa verin eki dirasa ta eki zamaantaku koffa huri inge to den namaste ka addiha ga hartawge fahukolum feshigen Dhivehi rajye Gujarati gotun hedifoti kihinetto Dhivehi rajye ga atolutan hedifori kihinetto mi muhimmo kama behe gotun wara funko beruge beflaku dirasa kurawa mungen dawani den daadi fahun e befla wani fotegge sifaga e dirasa neru wafa inge to
den mi fotaki hasagotek den teacher unna wara muhimmu fote ekamaku ege iturun ham aamu ರೈತುನ್ನವೆಸ್ ಮಿ ವರ ಮುಹಿಮ್ ಫೊತೆ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಗುಳೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ಹಮ ತಫಾತ್ ಮುಹಿಮ್ ಮಾಲೂಮಾತಕ್ಕೆ ಲಿಬಿಗೆನ್ ದಾಣ ಫೊತೆ ಹಸಗೊತೆಕ ಮಿ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಉಫೆದಿಗೆನ್ ಐ ಕಿಹಿನೆಕ್ಕಮ ಮಿ ಅತಳುತಕ ಮಿ ಉಫೆದಿಗೆನ್ ಆಗೊತ ಮಿ ಹುರಿಹಾ ಕಮೆನ್ ಹಮ ಎಂಗಿಗೆನ್ ದಾಣ
then mi fotam mi kiyani atoll and island formation in the Maldives then a teacher guide to the public ehmi ಟೀಚರುಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತುಕೊಂಡ ಮುದರಿಸುಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತುಗ ಹರಕಾತೆರಿ ವಡಾನುವ ಬೇಫುಳುನ್ನ ಮಿ ವಾಹಕತ ಕಿಹಿನೆತ್ತೋ ದರಿವರುಣ್ಣ ಹಮೆ ಗೆಂಗೊಸ್ತೇನಿ ಏಕಂ ವೆಸ್ ಅರುಣ್ ಮೆತಿ ಬೇಫುಳುನ್ನ ಮಿಯದು ಬೇಳನಿ ಗೆನೆಸ್ತೆ ಹಿಂಗೆ ತೋ ತೇಕಂ ಏಗೆ ಕೋರಿನ್ ಕೊಮ್ಮೆಸ್ ಪರಕ ಮಿ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಆ ಬೇಗೊತ್ತೋ ನೊತ್ತ ಮಿ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಗೆ ಮುಹಿಮ ಕಮ ಬೇಗೊತ್ತೋ ಅರುಣ್ ಮೆವೆ ಸೆಬಜೆ ಹೆಕಣ್ಣೆ ಕುಡಕೋ ವಾಹಕ ದಕ್ಕಾಲ ಹೇನೋದ ಹುದಾದಕೆ ಗೊತ್ತುಗ ಕೀವೆ ಮುಹಿಮ್ಮವಣಿ ಮಿಕಾಲ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್
ಅಸ್ಲು ಮಿಕಾದ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಎಮ್ಮೆ ಬೊಡ ಮಿ ಎಮ್ಮೆ ಮುಹಿಮ್ಮು ಆಯ್ ಸಬಬಕಿ ಮಿ ಅಳುನ್ ಮಂ ಕಬೂಲ್ ಕುರಂಗೆ ಬಜೆ ಅಳುನ್ ಮೆ ದಿರಿಯುಳೆ ಗಾವಮು ಫೆದಿಗೆ ಹಾಸಗೊತಕ ಎಹೆನ್ ಗಾವಮು ತಕ ಅಳಬಲ ಅರ್ಥಂಕೊಳೆ ತಫಾತು ಗಾವಮೆ ರಾಜ್ಯಕಿ ಅತೊಳು ತಕೆಗೆ ಮಚ್ಚ ಮಿ ಮುರಕ್ಯಾಂ ಹೆದಿಫೊಯ್ ಗಾವಮ ಕೆಮ ಮಿ ಗಾವಮು ಫೆದಿಗೆ ಆ ಗೊತ ಮಿ ಗಾವಮು ಕಲ ಮಿ ಅತೊಳುತ ಮಿ ಐ ಕಿಹಿನೆಕ್ಕೊಂ ಗೊತಕಕಮ ಮಿ ಹುರಿಹಾ ಎತ್ತೆ ಎಂಗೆಂ ಎಬಜೆ ಹೇಕಣ್ಣೆಂಗೆ ಅಳುನುಮೆಂ ಮಿ ರಾಜ್ಯಗ ದಿರಿ ಉಳೇಕಮವಾಣಂ ಅಳುನ ಕಬೂಲ್ ಕುರವೆನಿ ಎಯೆ ಅಸ್ಲು ಎಮ್ಮೆ ಮುಹಿಮ್ಮು ಕಮಕಿ
ದೆನ್ ಬೈ ಫಾರ್ ವಾಗುತಿ ಮಿಸಾ ಕಾರಣ್ ಹದಾ ಹೊರೆ ಕುಡೇರೋ ಇಎಸ್ ಫೋಟೋಗ ಒಣ್ಣಾನೆ ವೋಲ್ಕೆನೋ ತಕೆಗೆ ನೋತ ಅಲಿಫಾ ಫರ್ಬತಗೆ ಮತಿಗೆ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಹೆದಿಫಾ ಒತಿ ಏಕಮಕು ಅರುಣ ಹೀವನಿ ಮಿ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಗೆ ಸಬಬು e hialu badalumaki ekashigen wa kamen ehem wima ekan oinkoi balalan hinga
ehem wima hinga den alun menna magita waga deke kannege
ehem wima alun mihar tibefuluna mi genestem miuleni debefula studio geneske mi fota behegoto kurieta interview welcome to the show. First, I would like to welcome Professor Andre Droxler, Professor in Marine Geology and Oceanography at Rice University, the United States.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Maldives once again.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. And Dr. Aminath Shiyama, Quality Assurance Controller at the Quality Control Unit at the Maldives National University. Welcome to the show, the both of you.
Thank you.
Now, I want to begin by asking you a very important question. Your research is on the atoll and island formation in the Maldives. Why this subject?
Well, I'm a marine geologist and specialized on reefs and carbonate platforms. I've done this, all over the world. Mm-hmm. But in 1987, I came to the Maldives already. 1987. The audience will realize that I'm not, kind of that young anymore. But since that time when I came with a drill ship to do science, I've been involved in doing research in the Maldives. And one of the big questions is, at least for a geologist, why the atolls are there and how old are they, and also the few exposed area of these atolls are the islands where we live today and where you live here in the Maldives, and it's a very small part of this big, thick system called a carbonate platform. And because it's underwater, it's like an iceberg. Probably, it's kind of tough to use an analog, as an iceberg in the Maldives, but probably, you have learned at school that an iceberg is only 10% is exposed and everything else is underwater and nobody knows what's underwater, yes? Same thing in the Maldives, but the exposed area in the Maldives, it's not 10% as an iceberg, but it's 0.01%. So the exposed area, the islands here, it's a minute part of this huge, large, what we call carbonate platform. And it's not only thick, 2 to 3 kilometers thick, or 800 kilometers in length, and 150 kilometers in width, but it's also very old. It was established 55 million years ago. So,
oh my God.
through these decades of research, and not only my own, but with different types of science, but also oil and gas exploration, we have learned a lot about this very huge, thick, old carbonate system, which is barely exposed above sea level on the island, yes. So I think it's interesting, kind of to, first for a scientist to learn about, the evolution of this system, but I always thought it was important kind of to communicate what we have learned in the past 30 or 40 years to everyone here in the Maldives, because there are misconceptions here. And so knowledge is always an important part of life, and it's very important kind of to communicate what we have learned as scientists.
And what is also more important is to keep updating the knowledge that we have, and your research has definitely helped us do that. Now, I want to follow up by asking just one crucial question. Is it valid anymore to say that the Maldives sits atop a volcano?
Well, it's on top of a volcanic basement. And in this case, it's not really a volcano or many smaller volcanoes, as Darwin had proposed in 1842, which is a long time ago, and he had very little knowledge to come up now with this fabulous model that he came up, but he had very little knowledge, so we have to give him credit, but we don't have to give ourselves credit to multiply kind of this simple model based on the 1800 knowledge again and again, because we have learned so much. So it's kind of unusual when you think about that, and it's not only in the Maldives, everywhere. I mean, even in my own university, kind of we still teach, this Darwin model. So yes, there is a volcanic basement, but it is, kind of below this very thick platform, 2 to 3 kilometers thick, and we have drilled, when I say we, the scientists, but also the oil industry that came in here in the 70s and 80s, they've drilled 3 kilometers of reefal limestone and now reached this volcanic system. And it's a long, long evolution of this reefal system, 55 million years. And the atolls themselves are just the last 500,000 years, 500,000 years. And after the island themselves are only less than 4,000 years. So all of this is, I know it might be difficult to understand this as a lame person or somebody who doesn't know or doesn't have the concept of geological evolution. But if you think of the time, yes, so the basement, the volcanic basement is 55 to 57 million years. The reefal system that started is about 55 million years. And it's a long evolution. And so the atoll themselves, which are very new, 500,000 years, have nothing to do, with the volcanic basement anymore.
දැන් මේ ෆොතුගේ වාහක ශියාමෙන්ගේ ෆොතුගේ වාහක දෙකේවර මේ ටීචරුන්න කොංකොං ගොත්තක කොන්තෝ මිෆොයි හගිගතු කියවා දෙනුම ගහි තෙරකම් ෆෝර් කොතෙන්
ಶುಕ್ರಿಯಾ ಇಂಗಿತ ಅಲ್ಗನ್ ಕೊಬೆಸರಕ ಕಿಯಾಲ್ ದೇನ ಮಿಫೊಯಿ ಲಿಯಂ ಅಲ್ಗನ್ ಮೆನ್ನಂ ದಿಮಾವಿ ಸಬಬು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಆಂಡ್ರೆ ಮೀಗೆ ದ್ಯಾಹರೆ ವರ ಕೂರಿಂಗ್ ಫುಲ್ ಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್‌ಶಿಪ್ ಎಗ್ಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಚೇಂಜ್ ಎಗ್ಗೆ Geology Goma University වඩානෙවි වඩානවා ෆෙබ්‍රුවාරියේ රිසර්ච් අල්ගොන් මෙන්න තෙවලි කොන්ෆරන්ස් එක හුෂාලාල් දිනේ අලුගඬ වෙස් ඒ ටිවි ෂොක් එකක් අලුගඬ කිවි සයන්ස් ටීචර් වෙස් මේ සාතුග ඒ නවෙස් අලුගඬ සේ මාලුමාත් එක්කම අලුගඬ වෙස් සම රියලයිස් හිතන් එරි මි හාත් මුහිම මාලුමාතිකේ කොලන්ස් විදාලේ ගොත දිවසක වීති ඉංගින් ජෙහෙ මාලුමාතේ මි තෙන් එහා සබ අලුගඬ මෙ විස්නාලා හිතන් එරි කොම්මෙ දිවසක මිකහල් මුහිම මාලුමාතේ ඉංගෙන් ජෙහෙ ඉරු කිහින බායේ මි රීච් අවුට් කොත් දෙවෙනි හගීගතක තෙන් අලුගඬ කී ටීචර් එඩියුකේටර් එක වීම හැම හිතන් එරි හිඟාෂේ ස්කූල් තක මිකන් කොරි වෙන කාල් ගොතකන් හදන් එහෙම එහා හිසාබුන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් ඩොක්ටර් ඇන්ඩ්‍රේ අල්ගොන මිෂිද වාක දක්කාලි මි මාලුමාතු තංකොල සිම්පල් කොෆ ඒ එහා හිසාබන් යාල අල්ගොනස් ෆෙන් ෆහුරි ඔන්ඩ්‍රේ මෙන්ගේ ටීමුන් තයාර කොෆුරි ජර්නල් ආටිකල්ස් ද වර ඉන්ටෙන්ස් සයින්ටිෆික් නොලෙජ් ලිය ෆොරි ආටිකල් ගින මිහුන්නන් එක්සස් නුවා කහල් ගොතක මෙබුනි ඒ මාලුමාතු ඒ බේනු කොෆුරි ටර්මිනොලොජි යකී ෆු දෙවරක උදගුවානේ එම මීති තංකොල සිම්ප්ලිස්ටික් ටර්ම කුම් බදල් කොරු ටීචරුන ෆහම් වාන් කාල් ගොත්ක දරිවරුන ෆහම් වාන් කාල් ගොත්ක හිඟා බලාෂි හද දෙන් එහා සබුන් අල්ගොම වාහක දක්ක මුන් ගොස ඔන්රේව සම වගුතුන් එබස් වෙජ එකන් කුරන් එබ ජෙහෙ අල්ගොම හුරියා මෙන්න මේ කාල් මාලුමාත් ඉංගෙන් ජෙහෙ එබ එහා සබුන් දෙ අල්ගොම විස්නාලි කිනෙහි අල්ගොම මේ කාල් මසකතේ කුරේවේනි දෙන් දිවලචි ගොම යුනිවර්සිටි අන්නානි ආහාරකෝ එෆාරු දෙබුරන් යුලන් කුරානි ෆෙඩ් ලිමුගේ grant book writing grant em e grant ang algon men propose kuri hingashe fotel liyan school toge teacher unna target koffa e malumat himanafa adi teachers unna sida ikala ituru buray kanula mihar existing curriculum teriya mi malumat fettene kahal gotuka visnafa den ham anika teacher unna buray kanuwan kahal gotukan activities taka echi mi fotuka hunnan e benu kore vidan kahal activities taka worksheet taka echi ham sida algon men fahaga kollafa misalaka මිකාල මෙප රීඩ් කොල්ලාගෙන් ඒ මෙපුන් දරිවරුන්නා මිසාලක වර්ක්ෂීට් එක ෆිල් කොල්ලෙවෙන කහලා ගොතන් අල්ගොන් මිචි තයාර් කොෆුනානි දෙන් එන් ඒ අල්හම්දුලිල්ලාහ් අල්ගොන් මෙන්න ග්‍රාන්ට් ෆෙස් ලිබුණු එහා සබන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් දෙන් එන්නයිය මිනිස්ට්‍රිය ඔෆ් කෝස් මිනිස්ට්‍රිය අගොලිගෙන් දෙත්ත මිකාල් මසකත කොර මාන ස්කූල් තක කොර මසකත කවාති එන්නයිය අල්ගොන් මෙන් ගොස් අල්ගොන් මෙන් මි ප්‍රොපෝසල් හුෂේලි එබේ ෆලුන් වරක් ගයාවි කමකවි අදි හාසකො මිහාර අල්ගොන් මෙන් ගෞමියත් මාද්දා කියවා දින මට්ට කමසකත කොර මුන් දාර එබේ ෆලුන් නවස් මි හම වර මුහිම කමෙක්කම් පහ කොර වාදේව ෆුලි හම ඔන් බෝඩ් අල්ගොන් මෙන් නාක එබේ ෆලුන් විදාල හිඟාෂේ අල්ගොන් මෙන් ඒරු ටාගට් කොරි හම කෙනෙක් ස්ටේජ් 3 එහෙන් නහදා හිඟාෂේ හුරිහා කී ස්ටේජ් තක මිතු ෆුලා කොල්ලම් which was a very good idea එම් එහා සබන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් මුලි කරිකියුලම් එක්කො මෙප් කොල්ලාෆ මි මවලුමාතු relevant වාණික හල දායිරාත්ත මාද්දාතන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් මෙප් කොල්ලාෆ එහෙම හුරිහා කී ස්ටේජ් එක වාගොත්ත මිහාර කී ස්ටේජ් 1 to 4 හම දරිවරුන්ගේ උමුරු ෆුරේ විස්නාගෙන් ඒ උමුරුගේ කුදින්න මි මවලුමාතු ෆහම් වාණික හල ගොතක එකි ස්ටේජ් ගේ එචීත hani mani primary kudina eha isamu fula wamun as grade 10 9 10 ge kudina bes e mawlumat expand wana kahal gotkan algon men mihar battan kofa mihiri ehmima waki umur furay kudina algon men hunnana benu kofa dem onre de ki mawlumat podcast ege sifa gadwa everin thankolai young kudina algon men hunnan youtube video ege beflon tayar kofri 84 kod deven kahal gotkan eki kahala දරිවරුන් හෙදිබොඩවමුගේ ඒ හුන්න කන්තතක විස්නාගෙන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් තයාර් කොෆ මීර හරකැත්තක මිහිරි දෙන් හැම යායකොන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් හැම ෆොතගේ ෆහත් කොලග ඔන්ඩ දෙමෙ දෙකේ වාහක ටීචර්ස් උන්න කියාලම් ෆසේ වාන කහල් ගොතකන් ඉමේජස් තක එක්කොන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් හිමනාෆ වාන එම එලෙවල් අල්ගොන් මෙන් ෆෙමොති තයාර් කොෆ දෙන් හැම යායකොන් අල්ගොන් මෙන් හැම ස්කූල් තවගේ සෝෂල් සයන්ස් ටීචර්ස් social studies teachers unna algon men baddal kurin mige prototype tayar kurma kof algon men request kurin mi implement kolla deshe trial ek gotuga school tahoga kinetto e wani tibe flunge feedback wara muhime so they were all on board hama wara ufa huriha be flunge star hi wara boda libun em egotun algon men tayar kof fote meti tividalu gote eki ekala muru furai kudinna suitable වාණක හල් ගොතක plus algon me barabboda balali curriculum ga mihar faag kofri outcomes taka indicators taka gule gotan ekam kura e algon me misal ka balali ar dashu grade toga boda curriculum ga faag kofonnani Atoll taka arattaka ofedifa hunna going hama nuniya e shape taka aichi dariwarunan ingen wani ehema eyan algon me magfahi wani gotaka mi mawlumat komme saraka warak kudakon himanan algon me for koddi fa hunnani den yaje higen key stage 2 3 ga komme sarakan ebhuri ekala mi kurin ifaha kurevi gota volcano kunne rajyo feduni e mawlumatge ituran algon me mihar me bunade me uleni e ike ituran adi ebahutte wara babble processors take ehema echi misalka youtube video en adwa hala fa den ebe fulun egen kudin egen e comprehend wani coachetto kiya bala hoda de mi algon men hama ya ekkon algon me wara boda peenum ve ekala hama ekani mawlumat ekan yunene ek mawlumat hoda go dariwarunna daskodde maran epa muhimuve ehema ek algon men buna ka scientific skills ta dariwarunna libena kahal gotka ehema scientist masake kurani kahal gotka misal ka mawlumat dinima mawlumat michi hoda mige mi dehawani mihenne ehema kurikolge grade ta algon men bune fen onnana mitaken ahare rajya wiki ehna mes edi furi mawlumatun ekudinnan e hode kahal gotka ehema kudinnan ekala miya shaugu veri kan ufeden adhasa ko science shaugu veri kan ufeden kahal gotka madun hunnana algon men e chita develop wan kahal gotka tayar kofa
Professor Droxler, we were just talking about the teaching guide, the details of it, but I have a larger question in mind. We're talking about the formation of the Maldives, and for a very long time we've been hearing the idea that the Maldives is going to sink. So I was just curious, is there any answer to that question, given that we're talking about climate change and global warming?
Yeah, it's interesting that we think of, the Maldives sinking, meaning, kind of somehow the ground of the Maldives is going to go down, yes? Mm-hmm. It does go down, but, about 0.1 millimeters per year. 0.01 millimeters per year, sorry. Now, the sea level is rising about in the past maybe 10 years, 5 millimeters per year.
5 millimeters.
5 millimeters. So, yes, the ground is sinking, because the crust is cooling off, and so, but it's 2 orders of magnitude, meaning it's 100 times slower than sea level is rising. The end result is the same, yes? So if the ground is sinking, sea level will be rising. But now, if sea level is rising on top of this at 100 times faster than it's sinking, I would call it not really, kind of the islands are sinking. They're kind of going to be flooding because sea level is coming up that fast, yes. And it's interesting, because sea level has changed through times before at different rates. And in particular, I know as a geologist, you always go back in time, kind of maybe too long. But for instance, kind of 20,000 years ago, and you think, oh, that's a long time ago. Yes, it's a blink of an eye in geology. But 20,000 years ago, and very few people would know that sea level was 120 meters below today. Do you know about this? No. So imagine what happened if now sea level would be 120 meters below today. All these big atolls would be fabulous islands. So what happened? Well, at the time, Antarctica was slightly bigger, not the Antarctic, but the ice sheets in Antarctica. But we had these huge ice sheets in the northern hemisphere, mostly covering the northern part of North America, for instance, Scandinavia, Siberia. And all of this ice that was accumulating on the continents in the northern hemisphere, the water has to come from somewhere. It comes from the ocean through evaporation, precipitation, snow, formation of ice through thousands of years. So now sea level had dropped 120 meters. So even this, it's so interesting to try not to tell people that even in the past, in the recent past, we had this huge change of sea level. 20,000 years ago, and from about 19,000 years to about 6,000 years, sea level went up. And it's still going up. So you would say kind of naturally, kind of now this big island that existed 20,000 years ago have been reflooded, and we know this because we have cores and we understand it. And what we have, kind of left, kind of this island, only formed when sea level started to to really slow down. The sea level rise slowed down about 5,000-6,000 years ago. So the reef didn't have to keep up. Corals need to keep up, with the light. They live in symbiosis with some algae, so they need to have the sunlight. So now, if sea level is rising, what happened? They have to grow enough and accumulate so much material to remain within the light. So if sea level is rising too fast, now the corals cannot keep up that fast. But they are very capable of, even during this very short time when sea level was going up 100 meters, to be able to kind of accumulate enough, but just enough to remain within the flooding zone. Now, about 6,000 years ago, sea level rise slowed down, so the reef were much happier. They would be overproducing calcium carbonate, and the leftovers of these reefs, the destruction by erosion by the waves, would now create a kind of accumulation of sand and pebbles and cobbles behind the reef and create the island. That's the reason why this island is so much younger, because it's only when sea level slowed down or even went down slightly that now you create the island. What happened in the past 100 years since the Industrial Revolution? We are changing the system. We are now changing the atmospheric composition. We are adding greenhouse gases, most of it carbon dioxide, but also methane. So now we are the human, have influenced the system. So sea level is rising again, and sea level has been the rate, how fast sea level is rising is increasing every decades. For instance, kind of between 1990 and 2000, it was about 2.5 millimeters per year. The next decade was 3.5, and
Now
this
it is
past
5.
decade, sorry?
Now it is 5 millimeter.
It's 5 millimeters. And so it's rising. Why? Because the Earth is warming, and it's not warming because of these very natural cycles, but it's by the human impact. We are a species quite an interesting species. You know, we can not only change our local or regional area, but we change the composition of the atmosphere, and we change our environment as well. But we have started something, and it's going to happen. We can mitigate, you know, kind of the effect of it. But the Maldives is a very surprising, you know, country where people live. I mean, we live, you know, here on the edge of sea level. And so, you know, coming from the US, and I tell people I'm going to go to the Maldives, they say, you mean they're still in existence? Yes, they're more in existence now than they were 20 years ago. I mean, when you see the development. But it's going to be interesting in the next 50 years, 100 years, how, you know, kind of the Maldives will be able to, you know, kind of react to this sea level rise. And we are doing it at the moment. You know, you are bringing population in very specific area. You are creating land. You are adding the relief. Probably most of you know that the relief and the natural relief is less than 2 meters, maybe 2.5 meters, which is nothing when you compare with, you know, 5 millimeters per year. Well, 5 millimeters per year in about 80 years would be about, you know, 30 centimeters or 50 centimeters. But this is what is happening now. There are models and forecasts that it could be much faster than this. And in 2100, there are extreme cases where the ice sheets are not melting, but they are melting and collapsing. And so if they collapse, they can now raise not only, you know, 50 centimeters, but maybe a meter. Some extreme cases would be 2 meters. And so you would say, well, can you find out time in the past when sea level was rising that fast? Now, during this major deglaciation, you know, from, forget I was not ignoring you, but so, you know, as I said, it was 120 meters below. And so it was rising sometimes very fast, much faster than this 5 millimeters. We call this meltwater pulse. For instance, about 14.5, you know, thousand years ago. Suddenly, you know, kind of sea level was rising in meters per century for 500 years. So in this case, you are talking about 10 or 12 meters in half, you know, after 500, so, you know, 1,000 years. So you are looking at meters per century. So if this type of scenario would happen in the next 100 years, this will be a huge challenge, you know, for this low-lying coral island. So we can learn a lot, you know, from looking at the past and try to understand how naturally, you know, the system has responded in terms of sea level rise.
It's an interesting topic to talk, but we need to conclude. Aslu hamani malam ge kuring ham kiha muhim research etomi hasa koteka rajya ga miharu diriule huri ha
algon deke gotuga mi fardi gotung huri ha mena singen chehen malumat kannege em demme on res paha kuri gotang algon men miharu musumang anna badalta ka duniya me anna badalta ka eyata ka huri ha men fardi gotege ves ijmali gotege sebeche kanne masaketta ke kura em ekal masaketta ke kureveni algon kabul kura gotuga mi rattangu fetu furi gota rattakuge e zata huri ha itin ingi kabul kuregen kamang algon deke ni hemima algon men kabul kura gotuga hamagam school tahuge mi annang generation taka jil taka me malumat for kodino wara muhim eha hisabon ekudin den mi kanta taka ama hurmat taka ekudin teduwan ka kashwar.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
I'm sure this teaching guide will go a long way in educating the younger generations, especially.
Yeah, and I'm very
That's
grateful not to MNU and my colleagues at MNU. I do remember the first time I think I mentioned this idea that I went to try to find a way to help, you know, kind of educate the new generations. And my idea was, well, you know, maybe we can have a little pamphlet, you know, maybe for the middle
public,
school,
yeah.
no, even for the school, but for the middle school. And that was one of my objectives for my for my Fulbright. And now Shimi comes in and developed, you know, kind of this much larger program, and it's now the results are here.
Yeah. So
really
I
exciting.
just wanted to ask, Belunteri nattaka aron swada kollam beenu mi kihine tomi fe hoda hadan jeheni.
Mi fotoga malumat algon kabul kura gotuga huri ha mena singe jeheti algon me mi ge soft copy yen algon men library ge saruna website ulli bene ham
Okay.
pdf downloadable fote den ham yak kon algon men physically ham foitan algon me miharu gagade ka miharu terega mi baga algon me maseke kurang rarasha fonu eto hama em algon me mihar ministry ka huddeya ekkon algon me school taka michi warang avaha disseminate kollana
adu warabada shukriya engeto thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Maybe you could put now this book here.
Yes.
For a little
Would
while
be
at
nice.
least.
Thank you so
Read the
much.
size
On the
behind it.
bookshelf there. This
අරුන් මෙන් හෙඳුන හෙඳුනාග මී කහල අගුහරි මවල්මත්ත තිබෙෆන මි ගෙනස්තනී හම සබබෙන් නැතියෙන්නෝ අරුන් මෙන්ගේ කුරිමගා ගොලි එහෙන් හොදා මී හුරි හා මවල්මත්ත කෙම හුන්නේ මෙම මී ලවේක ජහිලාන ලව ගෙනස්ත කඩ අරුන් මි ෆයි කොඩක බලාලා